long time to rebuild the institution after substantial damage was caused during the tenure of suspended Commissioner Tom Moyane. Lackay, of course, is one of several senior SARS executives who left after Moyane's appointment. He cited unbearable working conditions. He joins us now from our Pretoria studios. Adrian, good evening to you and thank you for talking to us. Now, you're one of those who's blamed the current decline at the South African Revenue Services almost entirely on suspended Commissioner Tom Moyane. I mean, some might say surely one man, surely no man rather, is bigger than an institution like that.
Good evening and thank you for the opportunity, Bongani. I would agree with you. That argument makes sense. But for some of us who's worked with and worked under Mr. Tom Moyane, our experience has been, and I can speak for a number of people here, it is someone who pays little regard for due legal process in terms of labor relations or HR. It is someone who was appointed to the institution with the understanding that it had firm political cover to get rid of certain people in SARS, and it did so in a most unapologetic way with very little regard for the law or for due procedure, as I've said, and he ruled by fear. If you look at the numbers, in the first 16 months of his tenure as SARS Commissioner, 55 senior managers, executives, group executives, chief officers left the Revenue Service. In 2017, 506 SARS officials left the institutions. And these are statistics from 2 parliamentary answers by ministers of finance to questions that were posed to them. And if you look at the first batch of 55, the loss of experience, institutional knowledge by committed public servants who served the institution for many, many years is unprecedented in private sector institutions and public sector institutions in this country. And I think we are beginning to see the impact of all of this now in the form of under-collection of revenue, where Treasury has to borrow more money to stabilize our budget balance.
One of the objections you had around your own leaving was that, of course, as you mentioned there, in terms of many of the officials who left SARS, was that due process wasn't followed. This is exactly the same argument Tom Moyane has made to the president, saying that as far as he's concerned, all the matters around his continuation at SARS are matters that Parliament is still seized with, and that process should be concluded before any action is taken.
It's ironic, isn't it, Bongani, how the wheel turns? Maybe I should take you back to 2014. By December 2014, Mr. Moyane is the commissioner for SARS for about 2 months. He suspends Mr. Ivan Pillay, the deputy commissioner. He suspends Mr. Pete Richa, who was a group executive for risk. Those 2 individuals approach the Labour Court. Their suspensions are set aside. The Labour Court makes a number of findings against Mr. Moyane to the effect that he didn't follow procedure, he didn't give people notice of their suspension, they had to pay their own legal costs, they were reinstated and resuspended immediately again. And from that point onwards, it was really a purge of the top leadership in the institution. Now Mr. Moyane finds himself, according to his argument, in a similar position. So let's see now, will he go to the Labour Court? Will he carry his own legal costs? Will he seek a declaratory order from court? Because that's the appropriate process to follow. And we hope and we should demand and insist as the public and as taxpayers from Minister Nene to ensure that if there's litigation to challenge the president and the president's decision to suspend, that Mr. Moyane pays for it himself. He made sure that other people who wanted to defend themselves on charges relating to their positions in SARS, relating to their terms of office in SARS, that they receive no financial support. And I think the same rules must apply here. I think it's absolutely untenable for a commissioner of SARS to challenge the president in that way. Even if, in this case, Mr. Moyane wins in court, I can't see that he will win the longer term a war, if you want to put it in that way, because the president is the head of state. You as the commission, and this is what Mr. Moyane has been consistently arguing, throughout his term that I'm appointed by the President and I account to the President. He acknowledges that in his writing to President Ramaphosa of last night, that it's the President's prerogative to appoint the SARS Commissioner. So the President has now made a decision, and he's made a decision to say, I've lost confidence in you as the leader of the institution, and I'm giving him the opportunity to go. So we'll have to see how this plays out. I think, knowing Mr. Moyane, he will go to court and he will seek legal advice to that effect.
Now, the President's letter of suspension refers to, among other things, a loss of public confidence in the Revenue Service. As we go towards for the financial year end, do you think that as things stand now, SARS might be able to meet its revenue targets? And I suppose as this thing plays out, the name of SABC Jonas has been mooted. Is that somebody you'd like to see at the helm that might improve things? And if afforded an opportunity, will you go back?
To answer your last question first regarding Mr. Mcebisi Jonas, yes, absolutely. I think he will be an excellent choice to lead the institution on a permanent basis. The last part of your last question, would I go back? I think myself and many other former colleagues would want to contribute to any effort to restore dignity and credibility to that institution and to help the institution to focus on its core mandate, which is to collect all monies due to the fiscus. And that brings us to the first part of your question, the revenue target. Even if SARS makes the target in the February 2018 budget, we still sit on a revenue gap of 42 billion rands. We should not lose perspective of that. We should not lose perspective of the fact that although SARS made the revised target in the last financial year, 2016-17, that was a revenue gap of 22 billion rands, an under collection of 22 billion. So every time we see that SARS would underperform during the course of the financial year, Treasury and the National Treasury and the Minister of Finance lowers the revenue target, and there is a greater borrowing requirement in order to make the budget balance look more respectable. In this current financial year, 2017-18 or 2018-19, according to February's budget figures, we will have to pay more than 180 billion rands in debt service costs. Our debt to GDP ratio is creeping to 60%, and that is unsustainable. If you have a revenue service that year after year, by bigger margins, do not meet its targets, it signals that there's a problem. There's a problem not only with the economy not growing, there's a problem with the ability of the tax authority to stay on target and to actually deliver to the fiscus what the Minister of Finance and the National Treasury requires of that institution. So we need to put the figures into perspective. What we've been hearing since 2015 is that from SARS's side, under Commissioner Moyane, we've collected more than R1 trillion year on year. That's the one part of the story they tell the public. They never tell the story that since 2015-16, every year Treasury had to adjust the revenue target downwards to accommodate the lower than expected revenue performance by SARS. The last part of that story is never explicitly told to the public, and we must believe that everything is fine in the institution. I think SARS has a lot of questions. Yes.
Yes, we will have to leave it there. I think you've made the point quite clear there. Former SARS spokesperson there on from our Pretoria studio, Adrian Lackay, around the suspension of Commissioner Tom Moyane. Now, the Parliamentary Press Gallery Association says it's appalled by the assault of a journalist in the parliamentary precinct by EFF MP Floyd Shivambu. It says any journalist working in the precinct on assignment is fully entitled to ask questions of any public representative. Meanwhile, in a statement, Shivambu has apologized for the incident.